Okay, Aaron, we're live now. So thank
Perfect.
you so much, for being here. Our last call was like 4 years, 3 years. Was a long time
Yeah.
ago.
What? Oh, you mean like the first time we talked, or?
No. Like we also did like a podcast thing that it's on YouTube, and it was like 3 4 years ago.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been like 2021. Oh
yeah,
wow. Yeah, you're right.
2021. Yeah. So yeah. So for those that don't know Fisher College, which I know, I probably think that it's not many people, like you guys are very popular in the collegiate scene around the world. But like, can you make a brief intro about yourself and about your program?
Yeah, I mean, my name is Aaron Goldekmo. I'm the assistant director of esports at Fisher College. We're a small university located in Boston, Massachusetts, Back Bay, Beacon Street. It's this, beautiful part of Boston itself. We have over 250 students that are active within our esports program between our online program as well as our in-person program. And, when I say it's a small school, you're looking at a school that's about 2,000, 2,500 students, right? Just in between there for its full-time enrollment. So, we have a bunch of different majors. We've been a business school for over 100 years. So, business is our business, as well as computer science, criminal justice, psychology, sociology, biology, all those different types of majors. And we also specialize in associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees.
Amazing. And 250 students, like, what's the structure? How do you manage all that?
Yeah, so I mean, the best part about it too is that we do rely very heavily on student managers and student coaches to oversee a lot of the individual teams. When we say we have the 250 students, again, that is part of our community as well as our varsity program. So we do actually have a lot of teams that are very student led. It's just that the esports program, what I'm in charge of, we do fund them, we do bring them places, we fly them out, we go to these different LAN events, we give them, access to the PCs, we schedule them onto those PCs. It really just kind of depends on what they're looking to do, but we also have a lot of students that are part of the production side, part of the graphic design side, so there's a lot of different facets in which the students can get involved.
Amazing. And you just mentioned LAN events. How did it go in Texas?
Yeah, so Texas
Tell
went really
us.
well. So Playfly, we won 5 of the 8. Total titles. There was only 2 schools that won the tournament of champion titles. So it was us and Northwood. So we won 5. Northwood won 3. And it was actually kind of funny because Northwood won the first 3, and then we won the last 5. So that was really exciting for Playfly, now Play Versus. And then for the CECC side, we ended up taking back the Smash title, which we're really excited about. Last year, we came up a little bit short, but this is my personal 3rd Smash title, so I'm really excited about that.
Amazing, amazing. I also saw pictures on X. Like, how many students did you guys fly out to Texas?
Yeah, so total between all the different games, because there was 9 different titles there, and we were the only school that was participating in all 9 titles. We had 95 students, or 95 people that we ended up flying out. A lot of that does include staff. A lot of that does include, some of the production stuff. Shout out to Ellie, who did all of the photography for the program that past weekend, or past week. It was a week. So, we fly everybody out like that. Our production crew who ran the Smash Open event, where we had 2 Fisher students who ended up winning that Smash Open event. So shout out to them as well. So all those different people, just getting them down into the Texas area and making sure that we have hotel, we have food stipends, we have flights. We're making sure we're monitoring canceled flights, delayed flights. It was definitely 2 very long days of travel initially. And then once everybody was there, it was 3 very long days, 4 very long days of event. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I used to travel, like, for tennis to compete in the collegiate level, and like we're like a team of like what, 8 9, and already like the staff was like all going all crazy with us. I can't imagine, with all the students that you guys get.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, something unique, as I mentioned before, we do offer those online or in-person
Mhm.
degrees. So it's not like I'm getting 95 people Boston to DFW. I'm getting about
Yeah.
50 people from Boston to DFW, and then we had 27 other cities that we were flying people out of. So that was a whole other situation that we had to deal with. Is, what if it's raining in LAX, right? And that, causes those delays. It was raining in DFW both days that we arrived and the days that we left. So that led to a lot of delays. 2 students had their flights canceled, so they had to wait until the next day. What did that necessarily look like? So there is a lot of those logistical puzzles that we have to solve when getting people around and moving people around to different areas.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So any like how many LAN events do you travel per year with the team, or do you focus on the Texas one? Like what's the schedule? Because
Yeah,
like
so
students love that. Yeah.
yeah, no, the students absolutely love going to the LAN event. So we try and do at least one LAN event per team minimum. Within the year, it really just kind of depends on the individual games. There's not a lot for College Halo, but fortunately, the College Halo National Championships is going to be in San Antonio this weekend, so we are sending our team out there. You have Call of Duty, who again, they've had one LAN event, but then they have their challenger events too, so it makes it a little bit easier where we're not trying to send them to too many events because we know that they're naturally going to go to a bunch of different events. Same with Super Smash Brothers. Obviously, when it's this championship time where you have this April through May timeline, we were maximum going to be doing 9 LAN events in about 7 weeks. That was what we were looking at. Unfortunately, we didn't end up making the finals for both CLOL and CVAL, so we no longer will be going to Raleigh. So that means that we only had to go to 8 in 7 weeks, which is still a massive amount of games. And it's not like we're sending one team to a lot of these LANs. We did end up sending the one team to the Cincinnati LAN for Rainbow Six, which was great. But obviously, then you had the weekend before CECC. Not a lot of people realized was the NACE LAN in Orlando, where we sent a Valorant team. You had the Aurora LAN for the Game Changers roster. So we had another Valorant team that went to Chicago. And then finally, we also had our Counter-Strike team, which finished top 8 at Fragadelphia, which was at Level Up Expo in Vegas. So the weekend prior to CECC, we actually had 3 teams in 3 different cities with 3 different staff members going to all those different places. So it can be a lot. But honestly, it's all for the kids at the end of the day. It's about their experiences and making memories that they're never going to forget. I'm sure the Counter-Strike team will definitely remember Vegas, as well as the Valorant team had a very nice time down in Orlando.
I saw a lot of posts about Vegas, about with the Counter-Strike thing, and also like Alex here just commented it in the comment section, the team captain. So
I'm nervous to hear what he ended up commenting, but honestly, bringing 4
Aaron, that's it.
Having 4 Europeans and a Midwestern student that had never been to Vegas before, that's obviously going to be very life-changing. We had one person who they originally lived in Chicago, so when they went with the Game Changers team, they knew about a couple of the sites and they were able to bring people around. And unfortunately, the Valorant team, they wanted to go to Disney, but unfortunately they didn't have enough time to go to Disney, so they didn't get to experience that. But they still had a really great time just exploring the city and seeing what was available for them.
Yeah. So now that we just mentioned Alex, so you guys have various video games, and you're in the top 3 or top 5 or sometimes a top 1. So but you don't only recruit top competitive players. So can you hide us into how do you how's your academy team in all the video games looking? How do you develop them?
Yeah, so it really just is game dependent. So a lot of people don't realize that, we have a ton of different Valorant teams. Valorant is probably our most popular game at this point. We have about 50 students that compete in Valorant. You can't have 50 students all on one team. A lot of leagues, they limit it to 10. So a lot of the times, we have anywhere between about 6 to 8 active Valorant rosters this past year. In the past, we've had as many as 6 Overwatch rosters. In the past, we've had as many as 5 Smash rosters. And so the reason that we open it up to so many different individuals from different skill levels is because we want to give those opportunities for as many people as possible. One of my personal models is educate the world. And so honestly, if we're able to bring in people that may not be going to college, may not want to go to college prior to video games, but we're able to give them the opportunities to say, hey, we're going to give you a scholarship. We're going to have you, come play for Fisher, come play for the university. You're going to end up playing on an academy roster, potentially a 3rd roster. This is going to be helping your development because you're going to be surrounded by other players that are above your skill level, such as, talking about Alex. If we had an academy Counter-Strike team, they would still be able to work with Alex. They'd substitute on, some of the smaller rosters or some of the smaller competition rosters with him and be able to learn, practice, be around, and just naturally improve. We've seen a lot of improvement from a lot of different players just by doing that. In fact, one of our Overwatch players last year started on the 4th Overwatch roster and worked his way up to the 2nd Overwatch roster within a semester. And that's only because he was working with the captain and the head, the captain of the number one Overwatch team that we had, Neb. And so he was playing with Neb pretty much nightly in the esports arena and just kind of learning, improving, talking to him about the game. And that naturally helped him improve. Not only that, but working with the individual coaches for the rosters.
Amazing. And with like over 250 students, how do you keep track of like if they're, like hitting the targets of like how much training they have to do per week, academics, if they're going to class and stuff like this? How do you keep track of all those
Yeah.
students?
So with the training, that's going to come naturally. They naturally want to play the games, right? And so they're working with the coaches, they're working with the managers, making sure they're showing up on time. A lot of the times too, there are a ton of different collegiate leagues. I'm sure you've seen, jokes and memes about the many collegiate leagues that we all have. Now there's a lot of athletic conferences that they're kind of going off and forming their own. So you had like GLEC that just formed their own as well, but you have NECC, ECAC, NACE, Playfly, now Play Versus. So that's just 4 right there, not only to mention the publisher sponsors one. So sometimes there's easier competitions in those, and so sometimes we do take those official games and almost use them as scrimmages, especially if it's against a weaker opponent, try some new things, try out some new strategies. However, for the academic side, a lot of that does come with our just monitoring their grades. So myself, as well as all of our full-time staff members, we do have access to the students' grades, which we actually keep as our own tabs on. We keep our own spreadsheets on. We also end up getting quarterly reports. So we have a midterm report for all of our individual semesters and our quarters. And then obviously we have the final reports for those individual students. So we're able to pull their GPAs, make sure that they're being managed and say, hey, if you're not meeting these certain marks, what ends up happening? They end up getting benched. They're not eligible to play. And then once they end up not being eligible to play, a lot of the times they do end up swinging a lot of their motions. Caroline actually has basically been brought on to that's her main position here at Fisher, is just making sure that the students are doing what they need to do from the academic side. I did a lot of that in the past. But it was just me, and then we grew to 250 people, and now it's kind of like Caroline and I, with probably more like 80-90% her. So she's been doing a wonderful job just tracking all of that, putting together spreadsheets for us too. It's been a blessing.
Yeah. I can tell from personal experience, you're one of the schools that is the easiest admissions process.
Good.
And no, and it's like you would, because our students, we give them multiple offers that fit their profile. The amount of students that chose Fisher because of your seamless admissions process, were a lot, so congrats for that, by the way.
Yeah. A lot of that to even talk about too is honestly just the great relationship that we have with our admissions office. That was one of the first things that we did when we moved to Fisher, was we made sure, hey, we were going to have this communication directly with the admissions office, something that we actually started pretty much, I think it was about a month, maybe about 2 weeks in 2 weeks to a month into when we started with the position. We meet every Thursday at 10 a.m. with our entire admissions team. It is housing. It is the VP of admissions. It is the financial aid person as well, Jen. And then, just a plethora of other individuals, typically someone from international admissions, etc. And we go over every single student that has been coded as esports on that Thursday. And we say, this student is missing this. This student is missing this. The student is missing this. Are they still interested? If they're still interested, okay, we'll, reach out, push their communication. And so a lot of times, our recruits, they'll start to notice that pattern of, we start reaching out to them Thursday right after that 10 o'clock. So that's been very helpful. And then we actually recently hired another person, Fisher College alum, Jackson. He works directly in admissions. So that has been a big boon, where beforehand we had multiple different admissions coordinators that were in charge of making sure. And so sometimes it was a little bit difficult going and saying, hey, John is, assigned to Leah and Jackson is assigned to somebody else. But now with him, everyone and all the students basically get assigned to him, and he's able to just push and make sure that all of those individual students are getting through the system and making sure they do what they need to do.
But he doesn't only just do admissions. Like I saw the other day, like on X, that I think Brian posted congrats to Jackson for managing a whole entire tournament by himself, and I was like,
yeah. So everybody on our team honestly does a little bit of everything, myself and Brian just doing a little bit of everything too. So when we have these events and we have a lot of these opportunities, we saw the Massachusetts Scholastic High School Esports Association, MSHAA. was the an acronym and everything. They reached out. They said, "Hey, we're looking for a school to host. We think that Fisher would be a perfect opportunity. It's the same weekend as Texas." And we said, "All right, someone's got to stay back." Jackson was able to stay back and make sure that that ran really well. But a big piece of why that event was so successful is because we also had a lot of students that were able to work that event. Ethan, Curtis was another one. Kevin was another one. Those were three really big students that they didn't end up qualifying for Texas, or they games weren't at Texas, and so they were able to step up and get those experiences and get internship credit for working an event like that.
Okay. And you mentioned as well, like you have a bunch of like a lot of online students. Like not many universities that have esports programs have that approach. Most of them are like students have to be on campus. If not, they can be full slot students. And you guys are like innovating in that sense, giving opportunities, for like top players or like, to get an online education, because like sometimes they have to stay home. Not everyone can go on campus. So like, how do you guys manage the online, in person, and manage to have like teams and all that?
Yeah, so with the online stuff, we do require the students to have, deep communication, typically through Discord, or we have some sort of form of communication. We figure out what works best for them. I do have students that text me. I prefer if they didn't, but they do have my number because, hey, I know that's how they're going to answer. If we need them for a game one night, we give that to their managers. Their managers know that they have all their cell phone numbers. We can look up their cell phone numbers within our individual system. But it is just making sure that the students recognize that, what they need to do. We did implement student contracts this past season, which worked really, really well. All the students ended up signing that. That was part of the deal to compete this upcoming or this previous semester, was they needed to sign their contracts. It basically just set those expectations, how often they need to be practicing, how often they need to be checking their email. Right. We know that students don't like checking their emails. So having those types of requirements, if they're going to get those communications with, if there's a problem with Bursar, if there's a problem with billing, if there's a problem with their payment plans, stuff like that. Just making sure that the students are being, communicated to and respected, right, is a big piece of it. Honestly, it's tragic that a lot of other schools aren't taking advantage of the online piece. Yeah. It is the highest growing market. There are more college students online now than there are in the traditional sense of coming to a campus. There are giant schools that are vehemently against online, and they need to recognize that when you look into their financials, those schools would not be open without their online divisions. Their online divisions is what keeps their lights on, what keeps their buildings open, and what keeps them employed at this point. So it's a bit interesting when you kind of bring those opportunities up. But again, we talk to so many individual students that, one, they either can't afford to live in Boston, because that's something that we don't actually offer the full housing for our students. For a variety of different reasons. When, we know and recognize that some schools do, we think, hey, the online piece, it is going to be easier on them when they're trying to schedule around their busy lives, but also, it's a way for them to kind of save money in that aspect. But also, just some of these students, a lot of them are older at this point. A lot of the people within the esports industry that are considering college, that are at those top levels, they're 24, 25, maybe retired pros, maybe coming off their pros careers. Maybe they went to challengers, maybe they went to a tier 2 sense, and now they want to come back to college. They're not going to want to live on a college campus with a bunch of 18-year-olds. They're not going to want to live on a college campus with a bunch of, early 20-year-olds. They're going to live on their own. Some of them are married. Some of them have their own lives. So it's important for them to kind of do that. We have some students that they travel for a ton of different events because they need to, if they want to actually try and make it. Where you have Dylan, who was recently picked up by the Carolina, the professional Call of Duty team. Had he not been going to those challenger events and living on a college campus, he may have never gotten those types of opportunities, simply because they aren't necessarily looking at the collegiate scene. They're still looking at the tier 2 scene. Or you have Carlos and the many students that we have that actually ended up going to compete in Japan this past week. This was finals week for a lot of our students. And so the students that were online, they still had to complete their finals before or during their time in Texas. However, the students that were on campus, we had to get special exemptions for them. Not every school can do that. And so there were a lot of students that were actually just missing from this Texas event from those different schools, simply because their school doesn't actually, fully support esports at this point, and therefore they couldn't actually get them, barred from their exams. There's a lot of other teams out there that, had they been in person, and they're just missing so many classes, it's questionable how they're even passing. And so for us, it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to say, hey, go online. You're traveling Thursday until Monday. Make sure that you're getting all your work done by Wednesday, and make sure that you're still logging in to make sure that you're doing anything else that may have come up for your individual classes. So the flexibility of the online has been a big boon for us, as well as just kids wanting it more, and just more and more people wanting to go online and take classes online.
So flexibility is one of the main reasons why students choose to go to Fisher. What other like strengths do you have, or two other strengths you would say that students choose Fisher College or your auditional program?
I think it is the organization, and I think that we do show a lot that we care for the individual students. We've talked to a lot of our individual students about certain schools. They're going to end up having 6-month contracts, 1-year contracts, and if you aren't performing at the case, then after 6 months, they end up cutting you off. Right? They end up just taking away your scholarship, and they say, figure it out.
Yeah.
For us, we outline it very clearly in the student contracts how scholarships work and how they are applied to those individual students. The only time that we would pull a scholarship is if a student is not performing academically, rather than necessarily within the game. We expect them all to end up putting their best effort forwards, but they have that sort of safety net, knowing that at the end of the day, the main goal is for them to graduate. Texas was great. I am far more looking forward to this weekend, which isn't even the NECC. I'm not going to the NECC National Championships. I'm going to graduation this weekend, and I get to watch 22 kids walk across the stage and earn their degrees. At least 22. I actually have to go back and do the final count, but last time I looked, it was around 22 students that are going to be conferring their degrees this weekend, and that is what makes it, the most special for us. In addition to that, too, a lot of the times we do quickly organize the students based on, their individual classes. And we say, hey, there's these other esports students in your classes. I know you don't know them because this one's from Valorant, this one's from Super Smash Brothers, but here's a study group basically of people that are in the esports program. If you need to share the textbook or anything like that, or confer on some work, that's something else that you can end up doing. And plus, I think after that, so kind of the showing we care, and then honestly the other thing is we do instill that championship mentality within a lot of our students. A lot of our students, they always see and they always want to be playing the game, and they always want to win, sometimes to their own detriment, right? Sometimes that ends up happening, but basically these kids, they never want to go down without a fight. It doesn't matter if they're facing the number 1 team, the number 2 team, and they may be ranked number 5. They're always going to be putting in their best foot and just making sure that they're going down swinging.
Yeah. Here, Alex commented again, I chose Fisher because Fisher wins everything. That's why I wanted to go there. So I think that's why students, want to go there. Okay, amazing. And talking a bit more about the culture, your values. I mean, Thor here, my goat Aaron. Okay, now the CS team is there.
Love it.
Thanks for the comments, guys. No, but like for example, like how do you make sure that the newcoming students and the students that are like in the program like still like focus on like the culture, and in terms of values, how do you make sure? Because like we're like 4 people in the core team, then 8 recruiters, and still like sometimes I have like trouble, and like we communicate the mission, the values, but like like for you guys, it's a bigger team. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, a lot of the times too, we have our meetings at the beginning of the year where we go over all the individual rules, the expectations from the students, what ends up happening if they don't follow those expectations. Even with the LAN events and everything, we were the only team that I at least saw that kind of pulled everybody aside, and we sat them down in the big meeting rooms and we said, hey, here's some rules for the LAN. These are our expectations. This is what we expect of you guys. This is what we expect you to not do. Those types of things, and just really being harsh with those particular ground rules, but also understanding at the end of the day, they're college students. They're going to kind of do things. They're going to sneak around. I remember my college days. I tell them stories from my college days all the time, and sometimes mine were even more wild than they remember at this point. And so, at the end, they need to make sure that they still understand what they're here for, which is the video games, which is the winning, which is to get their education, but also that they can have that fun. Another thing that we honestly do is we have a lot of our rooms that are mixed. So when we end up having the students that are on campus, a lot of them, they're in the Overwatch room or something like that, or they're Overwatch players in the Overwatch room. They're still with other League of Legends players or the Rocket League team. Actually, and yeah, that was the exact room this past year. It was Street Fighter, Overwatch, Rocket League, and League of Legends, all in one room. And so a lot of times you just naturally get the teams that end up intermingling with each other. And hey, I also like this thing other than video games. So we had a lot of students that they liked soccer this past year or traditional sports. We had some students that they like, singing and music and stuff like that. So they're going to share a lot of those experiences. With the online kids, we try and still make them, we all make them get into calls still, for their game days, even if they don't necessarily like smash. It's sometimes a little hard because it's that 1v1 aspect. So sometimes they don't want to be in the call because they're trying to focus. But all the other games, they're still getting into calls. We're still doing fun activities just kind of on our own. And they're still just learning to be friends in and out of the games. So,
yeah, amazing. Here, again, Thor is commenting like Aaron's stories are wild. I don't know what he told Thor, but
I don't remember what I told him either at this point, but I do remember I was in the band when I was in college and everything, at a D1 school that was somewhat known for its like partying and everything. And so I have a lot of those very fond memories, but at the end of the day, I still had to get up at 9 and play my saxophone in the morning, no matter what happened. Right. And if I didn't show up, I get into a lot of trouble. And basically, I would have been barred from never going on these trips again. And so it's still instilling, the values in those students, too, that, hey, have fun, enjoy yourself, but, realize that you're still here to do a job and that the expectation is that you're going to perform or overperform at your job.
Yeah, of course. I don't know what you told him, but you convinced him to go to Fisher. So
excellent. Good.
No, and before we wrap up, like, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to mention?
I'm trying to even think. A lot of the stuff's from the academic side too. A lot of our students, they do end up liking Fisher so much that they have decided to start staying for their master's degrees. I think that's also another really underutilized part of this space. I've seen a lot of schools starting to push for like graduate assistants, but not necessarily like graduate students or students trying to get their master's degrees or recruiting for them. Cumberland's one that, comes to mind that they actually did a lot with that. They recruited 2 Fisher alumni at this point to do their master's program. And so with the master's degrees, a lot of the students, they're now recognizing that somewhat a bachelor's degree is not enough. We've kind of, just from like the American side, the degradation of a college degree has been something that I've talked about for a really long time. And it's something that I've actually very heavily pushed towards kids, just because when I was in high school, that was something that was pushed on us, is that high school degrees have been, degraded, where you have previous people that were managers or people that needed to be in small management, like lower level management positions. They only needed a high school degree. Now the expectation is a bachelor's degree with maybe a year of experience, right? So, those to get decent paying jobs, now you're going to need more and more education. And now even with the overflooding of the business majors, we're now seeing, more and more individual programs want MBAs. So we have started to push the MBA programs for us. And a lot of the times, maybe that's why they haven't been pushed. More and more graduate programs are moving online, just for the accessibility, because by the time that somebody wants to go to a graduate program, they have some sort of dedicated career and they're just looking for advancement within their career, or they're, being well established within an area, but hey, they still need to get that education to get that next step. And so just having those online options for them and those master's degree options is preferential for a lot of individuals.
Yeah. And also, like, one of my mentors, Timo from Finland, now he's in Abu Dhabi, like, he said that now, like, there's many, like, organizations that ask for a master's, so like there's people. So like, I want to ask you a question, because like we had this 3 times, okay, that is like industry professionals, okay, that have many years of experience, like 3 to 5 years of working experience, okay, or even more, like Timo, he's in his 40s. And universities still are like, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, we cannot, like, do you think that will change? Because in the UK, in in masters, like in universities in Europe, if you have a track record of being an industry professional for many years and have been successful, they will get you in their masters because they want you. So how is that thing? Because in the US, I've seen a lot of schools that are like, if you don't have a bachelor's, I'm sorry, it's the rules. Do you see that changing or not?
Personally, no, unless we see a big school decide to do it. And like, I'm not talking like Ohio State, like big. They are a
Yeah.
big name. I'm talking like a Harvard, because that would probably come from Massachusetts, because Massachusetts does like to emulate a lot of like European or even just the New England area in the States. I don't think it will change, because I will say that even one of my first jobs required a master's degree, and it didn't actually care that what my master's degree was in. It wanted the industry professional, it wanted that professional experience, and then it wanted that master's degree. And the reason that you have that is because I think that you do have a lot of faculty members that work in higher education that, because they have a doctorate, there is that level of expectation that you have some sort of matching education with them, so that you understand what they ended up having to go through, so that now you can also end up, conferring with them on different ideas and stances and stuff like that. And so I know from the public school side, they require the bachelor's degree simply because I think that it also just helps them in their own interest, right, in pushing those types of the ideals. But also, there is that level that you're going to get from a bachelor's degree, because that's something that we can quickly talk about too. Whenever I talk to European or people that are coming to the States for the first time or going to college for the first time, they don't really realize that their major pretty much will only cover about 30 to 40 of their credits, sometimes up to 60 of their credits. In fact, it's the major electives that covers the majority of their degree. And so at Fisher and every other school that I've ever talked to, you need 120 credits to graduate. So that 120 credits, it's 3 credits per class, sometimes 4 credits if there's a lab kind of class involved with that. But you need 120 credits to graduate. In those 120, you have a very small portion that is your major. And then about, I want to say for Fisher, it's now 70 credits right now, is the general studies. And the degree, and the reason that they do it that way is because the accreditors in the United States, they're looking for some sort of semblance and reasoning and consistency across the degree that says, when I have this bachelor's degree, I will know how to do X, Y, and Z things, and I will know about X, Y, and Z things, or have a general understanding of X, Y, and Z things that like is proven from this degree. And then you get the name of the degree, the cybersecurity, that says, okay, they've now gone above and beyond and taking individual courses that focus in this. So now if I'm looking for somebody to do something specific, I know that if I look for a cybersecurity degree, that I'm going to find somebody that has those specialized skills in addition to the initial, elective courses. So we have, like English 1, English 2, those are writing proficiency. So, a college degree means that you know how to write properly. You learn the mantra of the 5-paragraph essay or 5-page essay, whatever you want to call it at that point. We also require students to take a very basic computer education class, right? So they have a basics of Windows, Microsoft Excel, those types of courses. And then, most students have to take some sort of social science. So they have an understanding of some of the social science terms. When I was in college, everybody had to take in natural science. My degree was in natural science, and so they counted, for both. However, I had friends that were economics degree majors, and they had to take like astronomy or something like that. It's not the fact that, hey, everybody has to take astronomy, but you have this general science class that's going to teach you about hypotheses. It's going to teach you about the scientific method. It's going to teach you about these very basic things that we expect from those degrees. And I think that's more or less what the colleges in the United States are looking for, is that, those expectations that you're going to have these very basic skills. And that degree is kind of like a license showing you that you have those very basic skills, or you've been taught those very basic skills at the least.
Amazing explanation. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, Aaron, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time. And also, before we leave, I freaking love your t-shirt.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's something that I was just thinking about.
Yeah, I don't remember where this one. I think it's Men's Warehouse. Not sponsored, but honestly, I think it was Men's Warehouse.
Yeah, but thank you for the explanation, because that makes me understand more the reasoning of the universities in the US, and well, hopefully it'll change in the near future. Hopefully, who knows?
We'll see.
Okay,
I don't think it will. I want to make sure I answered the question. I don't actually.
Yeah,
I don't think it will. I don't know if I said that, but
yeah. Got it, got it. Okay.